Once again, welcome to session 8 of Think 304 Managerial Economics. And in this session, we are going to be starting market structures. Now, what are we going to be doing in market structures? We are going to be selecting the price and the outputs that the firms would have to be producing and be charging to be able to maximize their profits. So we are still thinking about profit maximization, and we are almost getting to the end of maximizing our profits. So we are going to be selecting price output that a firm would have to charge and produce to be able to maximize their profit. Now remember, we have understood cost in the previous session, and we also have understood revenue in the previous section, and so we are ready to understand profit. Once we select the price and the outputs that would help us maximize profit, we will go on and calculate the extent of profit that a firm would make. It's important to understand here that even though we are selecting the price and the output that would help a firm maximize its profit, it's not always that a firm would make profit. So basically, you're thinking about it in this case that under the best circumstance for the firm, what will be the extent of profit for the firm? This is how you need to think about it. And so you find that in some cases, the firms may be making losses or may even be in a situation where they may be shutting down, even though we are saying that they are maximizing profit. In this session, we are going to be looking at one aspect of market structure. Like I discussed with you earlier on, industries are very, very different. And so when it comes to selecting the price and the output that would help firms maximize profit, we can't lump the industries. We would have to look at industries based on the way they are actually structured. Some industries have very few firms in there. Some have very many firms in there. Some are large, some are very, very small. They have firms that are small, some have firms that are very large. And so the price and the output that would maximize profit in one industry may not necessarily be the same as the price and output that would maximize profit in another industry. So what we are doing here is that we are grouping all industries that look alike, and we are putting them in different markets. Okay, and so from this session onwards, we are going to be looking at different markets. We call them perfect competition, oligopoly, monopoly, and monopolistic competition. In this session, we are going to be concentrating on perfect competition. Now, we'll take a mathematical approach in the end, and you see exactly what I mean by that. The key topics to be covered in the session are as follows. We'll be looking at the characteristics of a perfectly competitive market. Then we'll be looking at short run and long run of a perfectly competitive market. Now, remember, production takes place in the long run and production takes place in the short run. The price and the output that will help firms maximize profit in the short run will not be the same as the price and the output that would help firms maximize profit in the long run. Our text is going to be by and Prince, and it's going to be the 8th edition. You can draw on many other texts to help you as far as this session is concerned. Now, to look at perfect competition, it's important for us to look at how we've even been able to group industries into the different markets. Now, we are grouping the industries into the different markets based on certain characteristics. So we have number of firms, nature of product, degree of entry or degree of ease of entry into the industry, information availability, firms' control over the price. And so if you normally have many firms that each firm is small, then you are likely to be talking about perfect competition. So for perfect competition, there are many small firms. For perfect competition, the products are homogeneous, they are the same. So the product of firm A is the same as the product of firm B, and that's the same as the product of firm C, etc., etc., in terms of everything. In terms of entry, there are no barriers, so any firm can enter, any firm can leave at any time. There's complete information under perfect competition, and when it comes to the degree of firm control, there's over the price, there's no control of any firm over the price. No firm has control over the price. And you can understand this because if there are many small firms in there, each firm is so small that if it increases the price, it will be pushed out of the market. And if it reduced the price, no firm was going to follow it. So it will still be pushed out of the market. So in terms of control over the price, no firm has any control whatsoever over the price of the product. Now, when it comes to monopolistic competition, there are also many small firms in that industry, but the number of firms may not be as many as that of perfect competition. The products here are differentiated, so this really what distinguishes perfect competition from monopolistic competition. Products are differentiated, which means that the products could be substitutes, but they are not perfect substitutes as they are under perfect competition. The degree of entry is also easy, not really as easy as that of perfect competition, but there are few barriers. And then there's relatively good information that is available, and there's some degree of control over the price of the products. Why do I say this? I say this because, remember, the products are not perfect substitutes, but they are substitutes. So the firms, in a way, do have some degree of control over the price of the product. Oligopoly, there are few firms, products are undifferentiated or can be differentiated. There are many barriers. Information is not readily available, and there's also some degree of control over the price of a product. Remember, the firms are large, but they are very few, so they can control the price of the product. Monopoly, there's a single firm producing a unique product, of course. There's a single firm, so the product is unique. Entry is totally blocked. Information not available. And then there's substantial degree of control over the price. Remember, the key here is substantial degree, not ultimate degree of control. So taking perfect competition, remember all the characteristics that I've given. There are many small firms in there such that each firm is not able to influence the price of the product. And so we say that under perfect competition, they are obviously price takers. Remember, they are price takers. And there are other characteristics that the buyers have perfect information or knowledge. There's free entry and exit, and there are no transaction costs. Now, if we're referring to session 6 that we're talking about the revenue curves and how they vary with output for price takers, then we'll see here that the demand curve or the average revenue curve and the marginal revenue curve and the price, which were the same for price takers, would obviously be horizontal. And because perfectly competitive firms are price takers, our demand curve would be horizontal. But obviously, the industry demand curve will be downward sloping. However, the demand curve for each firm would be horizontal, and the marginal revenue curve would also be horizontal. Now, in the short run, so this is what we are really seeing. The demand curve for the industry is down sloping, and the marginal revenue curve, however, is and for the firm, the demand curve is horizontal, as you see in the slide. Now, so what happens in a perfectly competitive firm in the short run, in industry in the short run? Well, in the short run, there are going to be 4 scenarios. 1, they can make abnormal profit. 2, they can make normal profit. 3, they can make losses. And 4, they can be in a situation when they can be shutting down. Now, remember what the profit maximization condition is. It's when marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So we know that our marginal cost is obviously U-shaped from what we saw in session 6. And then we know that our marginal revenue under this circumstance is horizontal. So if marginal cost equals marginal revenue, then we trace that point where they are equal downwards to Q2. We trace it to the axis where the price is, and then we find the price and the output. Now, remember, we have selected the price and the output that we want to maximize, that we want to produce and charge to maximize profit. However, we need to go on to calculate the extent of profit. Now, once we have the price and the output that would help us to maximize profit, calculating the extent of profit is very easy. Price and the output will give us the total revenue. We'll be left with the total cost, which means that if we have a function for our total cost, we can put in our output that would maximize the profit into the total cost function. And that can give us the exact total cost, and we can now find the extent of profit. However, when we are drawing, we have to draw, because we have information already on output that will maximize profit, it will only make sense for us to have our average cost curve, and then where we have our profit maximizing points, we trace it to the average cost curve, and then we have our average cost that will maximize profit. We times the average cost by the outputs, that would obviously give us our total cost. Under the circumstance, if we look at the diagram over there, the firm is making abnormal profit because the total revenue would be bigger than the total cost. We can also be in a situation where we had to be shutting down. And like I told you, the fact that you are maximizing profit doesn't necessarily mean that you'd always be making profit. You can be in a situation where we have to be shutting down. Now, when do we shut down? We shut down when we are making losses, but not always when we are making losses. We could be making losses, but we would want to be still producing because we are covering, our price that we are charging is covering our average variable cost. We only shut down if the price that we are charging is smaller than our average variable cost. That means we are charging a price that is not covering our labor costs, covering our raw material costs, etc., etc. That would make us want to be shutting down. So we need to be, if we are deciding to shut down, we need to be able to compare the price we are charging to the average variable cost. So remember what I said, in the short run, we could be making abnormal profit, we could be breaking even, we could be making losses, and we could be in a situation where we have to be shutting down. It all depends on comparing the revenue to the cost that you are making. What happens in the long run as perfectly competitive firms? What happens in the long run is that we have, because of the characteristic of free entry and exit, in the long run, a perfectly competitive firm would just be breaking even. The reason I say this is that if firms are making abnormal profits, other firms would enter, and then they would obviously increase the production. And if they increase the production, supply would increase, and that would drop down the prices. And that would make them move away from making abnormal profits. If firms were making losses, existing firms would leave, and that would reduce supply, price would increase, and that would cause firms' output or revenue to also go up. So the only condition that can exist in the long run for perfectly competitive firms would be the break-even condition. So I've given you a mathematical example here. Consider the firm with the following total monthly cost function, which includes the normal profit. Total cost equals the function that you have over here. The firm operates in a perfectly competitive industry and sells its product at the market-determined price of $10. To maximize total profit, what should be the firm's monthly output level, and how much economic profit will the firm earn each month? This is the procedure you need to follow. First, you determine the firm's marginal cost function, because remember, the whole idea is that for profit maximization, marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So marginal cost being equal to marginal revenue, you find the marginal cost and then you find your marginal revenue. Remember, under perfect computation, marginal revenue equals to price. So you equate your marginal cost to your price. That will give you the price and the output that would help you maximize profit. Once you get that, you go and then you insert that into your total revenue and your total cost function. That gives you your extent of profit. Thank you for your attention. See you in the next session.